Welcome back to part 2 of Worldie Unboxed, the Founders Edition. In part 1, we explored Amélie's inspiring journey of building and scaling innovative ventures. Now Aaron and I break down the key takeaways, including insights on achieving product market fit, effective fundraising strategies and goals, and the benefits of a strong team. We'll also reflect on how her lessons in leadership and resilience can guide our own journey at Worldie. Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to visit worldiebrand.com and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more highlights. All right, let's dive into part 2.
Yeah, I can start. So one of the things that Amélie was talking about was getting started with entrepreneurship early and how that kind of has benefited her throughout her life. And we've talked to a few other people who are kind of like lifetime entrepreneurs. And I know we're not necessarily that way, but now since you have this experience, are you going to introduce your daughters to entrepreneurship early? Have you thought about that? Like, what are your thoughts there?
Already introduced them to it. So really trying to get them exposed early. We constantly talk to them about like their aspirations, which obviously at this age and stage, they are constantly changing. Like it's always, depending on what they've seen on a show or what their friends are talking about or whatever it might be. So it's always constantly changing, but I try to give them a little bit of guidance when it comes to my own experiences and like things that they can do within the realm of entrepreneurship that like coincide with some of their own desires at this particular stage in their life. And so I definitely try to not like brainwash them or anything like that, but try to give them as much guidance based upon my own experience, because I think entrepreneurship in some form or fashion is very important for pretty much any individual. And so like I definitely think there's a lot of values to be had by pursuing entrepreneurship and trying to instill those values in the girls.
Yeah.
I guess it's you don't have any girls or kids coming up, but like
no.
Is that something that you plan on doing in the if they're little faisans running around?
I think it's similar to what I would say about sports, where it's like, deep down, you probably want them to get involved and be really passionate about sports as someone who played sports when you were younger, because kind of like how valuable it can be. And to an extent, you want to like live vicariously through your kids. Yes. But if you introduce them and they don't like it, then it's like you don't want to force it on them. So yeah, I think I would have that be an option and explain it and all that kind of stuff, and maybe have them do something that's a little bit entrepreneurial when they're young, but at the same time, you can't be too forceful and push them into something that they don't really want to do, because some people are just not entrepreneurs, and that's okay.
Yeah, no, I agree with that take. It isn't for everyone, but I still feel like there's some level of it that can be instilled in an individual. So like, I'm not saying that every single person should go out and like embark on their own venture, but like the entrepreneurial type spirit, I think that has some like values in it that can be like passed along without necessarily like impressing like full on entrepreneurship upon them, especially if they're not, willing or open, or that's not something that they hold it in high regard. So yeah, I agree with that, but I still think there are like things that I can kind of teach them from it, even if they're like, apprehensive or they don't want to go down that path.
Yeah. Makes sense. And then, so just in general, with this podcast, with just the amount of people we've talked to, there's a lot of people we've come across who are doing kind of like interesting or unique things and in industries that I've never heard of or really considered. So like, what are some of the different industries or other things outside of what we're doing that kind of interest you?
That's a good one. I've been like so focused on kind of like what we're going after that I haven't necessarily like ideated about any other like industry really. But I guess if I were to kind of think about it right now on the spot, like it would probably be something adjacent to like what we're kind of doing already, but I don't necessarily know what it is. And if I think about like all the people that we've connected with via the podcast, via just like our own networks, I would lean towards, I think I would stay in like consumer goods or something like that. I don't think I would venture too far into like the tech space. So I don't know what that would exactly be or entail, but I think I would probably say like consumer products and maybe create something else and kind of like bring that to life, whether it be something completely new or maybe a new take on something that's already here and already exists. So yeah, I think that's probably what I would do. But again, I haven't given that a whole heck of a lot of thought.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I mean, consumer is fun, right? Like making a product. There's a lot of things that are difficult about starting a consumer brand, but I think the highs are really high, and it's just really fun to be able to create something and see it, like see people actually use it and interact with it in the real world. And like once you get a taste of that, I feel like it's a bit addicting. So I definitely understand that. For me, like some of the other industries that kind of interest me, I've always been interested in media and more specifically film. So that's a space that interests me. And then also professional services, because that's kind of like my background. And I'm just kind of interested in, there's some different things you could do in that space. So not like, I'm not saying I'm like super passionate about working in professional services my whole career, but I think that it's an interesting kind of like talent pool. And I don't think it's always leveraged. Like if you transition out of professional services, it could be actually pretty hard to get a job. So for us, for example, like if we wanted to hire a former lawyer or banker or consultant, like there's not really a ton of avenues to do that. And a lot of people in the startup space don't know how to use people from the professional services world super effectively, because the skill set is just kind of like general. There's not like a super tangible skill set a lot of times that you have, at least from the business side. Like law, yeah, you do. So that's also something that kind of interests me.
Yeah, no, I can definitely see that those as options. So yeah, that's again something that I hadn't spent a whole lot of time thinking about it, but like I always think about like extension, like okay, what could we extend into, like brand extension?
Yeah.
Potentially like seeing something like that as like a one-off thing where I can kind of like, I don't know. Again, I haven't put a whole heck of a lot of thought, so I would be like kind of thinking out loud right now if I were to say that. So
No, that makes sense. And I mean, yeah, that's two different things, right? Like extension of our current business, like that's something that we need to be actively thinking about, versus like me just seeing other industries and I'm like, man, I'm interested to kind of like follow what's going on in this industry. You know, that's not really a required part of our business. It's just something that I can't help but think about when it comes across my radar.
yeah, for sure. Kind of switching it up a little bit. Amélie, she talked about like when she first went out and started raising, and she ended up like having, I don't know, $50,000 in her pocket. And at the time, or before that, it seemed impressive, but like at the time, it wasn't that impressive anymore. It was like, oh, you know, that was kind of like old hat, or like this was something that was like coming with the territory. What was, I guess, impressive when we first started off? Like what was something that, you know, we were kind of aspiring for and we thought would be impressive, that like once we obtain it, it wasn't as impressive anymore. Like it was just like, okay, that was just like, you know, that's just part of the process, or that's just like part of like, you know, the maturation of a company, and not necessarily like, wow, I can't believe we've arrived.
I would say just about everything. So like when you do it for the first time, you're like, man, this is a huge milestone. Can't believe we've made it this far. Like we've done that. Now, next stop is, you know, $50 million in revenue, right? And then you realize, oh, there's a ton of other steps that we have to kind of go through before we get there. But I think in general, kind of like getting people to work with you and getting them to buy into the idea. Initially, I thought that is kind of important, but there's a ton of people who will work with you if they feel like you have the money and they don't really have to buy into your idea. And even if they do, like it could be that they're just saying that because they want your money. So I think in general, like having people say, hey, this is a really good idea, or yeah, I would love to work with you guys. I used to think that was almost like validation, but kind of like Amélie was saying in the interview, you haven't really validated anything until people pay for your product. So I think that's been kind of like a major learning for me. It's like, it doesn't matter how many people tell us this is a really good idea, or they believe in us, or this thing is going to take off. Like we need to actually do it before that really becomes valuable in any way.
Yeah, that's a good one, because that was something that was, I guess, impressive to me before we obtained it. Like having people bought in on the idea and wanting to participate and wanting to do certain things or lead certain things or be a part of this company or venture in a very unique way or a significant way. So like, I think that was a good example. Another one that I thought, and this doesn't downplay like the experience at all. It just like kind of shows that, oh yeah, there's still some more proving to be done is, and I've mentioned it in other podcasts and I've mentioned it in other conversations with you, is like having someone wear the product, having someone that, not necessarily in our immediate family or something like that, wear the product and kind of like test it out. I thought that was going to be like the most impressive moment, but then you realize that like, okay, that's very cool. And that's a very significant milestone, but there's still a ways to go because you have to get those individuals to actually like pay for it. Like we're just kind of giving the product out and like allowing people to test it and give us and provide feedback for us. But like, that's one step, but we've only like arrived at a certain spot. We haven't gotten to that, like that actual step of a customer purchasing it and then putting it on and then like perhaps then providing some feedback. So that to me is like one of those like $50,000 in your pocket, not as exciting as it seems when you're, you don't have that type of access to funds or something like that. It's not as exciting to have someone put your shoe on when you know that the ultimate goal is to have someone like pay for that shoe and like then put it on. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like it's super cool to see kids running around wearing it. And it's cool to hear people say that they really like the design, but we're giving it away for free at the moment.
Yeah.
So it's like, do you like it enough to pay however much we're going to charge? And that's kind of the main question, which that's kind of segue into my next question, which is we were talking a lot about product market fit, me and Amélie. So what does product market fit mean to you? How would you define it?
So product market fit to me is when, and there's various levels to it, right? But like product market fit is when there's an actual customer or consumer that wants to pay money for your product or service. And so in our case, it's like there's a customer on the other side who wants to buy the shoe and they buy the shoe and it not only, fits their expectation, but like, maybe exceeds it in something that they are willing to purchase again. So like, I feel like at that point we have product market fit with that individual. And for us, it's like, okay, what level of that? Is that like 100? Is that 200 individuals who are willing to pay for it? It like maybe meets or exceeds their expectation and are willing to pay for it again. Is that enough to kind of constitute product market fit? I don't know the exact threshold numbers. I would assume somewhere in that range, at least initially, is a good enough base to say like, okay, we at least have that. We can kind of leverage that into some, scaling it into like a much broader consumer base. But for me, like at the very like rudimentary levels, it's like an individual willing to pay money for it initially, it meets or exceeds expectations, and they're willing to again pay for it. So I don't know it's a very amorphous, like I feel like situation, product market fit, and maybe a nebulous kind of thing. But what's your
definition is similar. It has one kind of add-on to what you said. So the way that I would define it is creating a product that enough people will pay for at a price that allows you to create or build a sustainable business. So the thing that I added, it was like, we need to price it at a price and get enough people in the door where we're not just losing money. Because you could sell 1 million shoes if you sold them for $1 per pair. But that doesn't mean, in my mind, I don't think you have product market fit if you've done that. So we got to get the kind of like the pricing and the business model right as well before we can really feel like, okay, we have product market fit and we can scale this thing up and still like be making money versus just increasing, multiplying the amount of losses that we have. Because anybody can sell a product for cheaper than market, but it's like, that's not a real business. So that's the only thing I would add.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. I think that like, that's the kind of qualifier that we kind of need in that. As we look towards like our soft launch, our Kickstarter event, this kind of cuts into one of my questions. And I kind of already admitted that I don't necessarily know the threshold or the metric that we would be able to use to say like, this signifies product market fit. but do you have like a notion of what that metric or threshold might be when it comes to how many consumers are willing to pay for this product, and this level, once it's hit, this is enough to signify product market fit?
I think Amélie had said like 1,000 people, like you can do anything with 1,000 fans. And, you know, if you have 1,000 worldie fans and they're kind of like telling their friends and family and stuff like that, so that probably multiplies it. But I think, I haven't done the math, but it's going to depend kind of like in terms of volume, how much you need to make a decent amount of money. But I would think anything under 1,000 people, it's kind of like there's some initial traction, but I wouldn't say it's product market fit. And in order to be like really confident about it, I think have to be like tens of thousands of customers before I say like, yeah, I feel confident that we have product market fit.
Yeah, those are some pretty lofty numbers right there. Yeah, I remember the 1,000. The only like pushback on that is that I think it's really product dependent or company or business dependent. Like, I don't know if those numbers are necessarily, you can just kind of across the board utilize it. I think like for this particular product, 1,000 would be great kind of coming out of the gate, but I don't know if that is the end all be all, simply because you've got to be able to like hit it on, you know, a marketing and branding level, being able to kind of get the story out there. Like, if you don't get that message out to enough people, then those people aren't going to hear about it, and obviously they aren't going to purchase it. So like, I think it like has to be something that you can recognize and act upon in order to scale. Like, okay, wow, we did get like 300 people who are really adamant about it, and that's a good enough sample size for us to be able to like go forward with the idea and like kind of grow that 300 into 3,000 and so on and so forth. So like, I mean, I think 1,000 would be great. That would be amazing. Like, I think that it's like a for sure knock out the park. We got product market fit, but I think there's a lot of different drivers to that 1,000 metric. Like, there's a lot of things that, you know, come into play that may exist beyond the product itself. And that could be like just reach with like the branding and marketing strategy. That could be just like the amount of consumers who have visibility on it. And that, again, like that coincides with the reach of the marketing. But like, I think that's a really good number, but I don't know if I'd have to think about it, but I feel like that might be kind of high.
Yeah, I wasn't saying like right out of the gate that's my expectation. But like, if we were to get like 200 or 300 people to buy our shoes through the Kickstarter, I'd be like, these are really good signs of traction and really good in like early indicators of product market fit. But I wouldn't be confident like going out beyond just the two of us and saying to people like, oh yeah, we have product market fit. We sold 300 pairs of shoes. So that's kind of like, maybe it's semantics to an extent, but I feel like, yeah, I'd be really happy to get that number out of the gate, like 200 to 300. But in my mind, that's still traction or early signs of product market fit. It's not full-blown product market fit, which is kind of like what you were saying earlier in terms of there's levels to it. So maybe your low levels of product market fit just kind of map to my high levels of traction.
Yeah. I think, again, like it almost is just like you got data, right? You got the data, like you've got the people coming in and like making the purchase, and you've got these numbers. It's just like, at what level do you feel comfortable with moving forward with the idea and being like, okay, we've hit that level of sales to the point where we can kind of consider ourselves like product market fit, and like, let's look now towards growth. Let's look now towards scaling. And I don't know if I have necessarily a number for that, but I'm sure there's some numbers like 1,000 might be it that makes sense when we get to that point, like to say like, okay, this is definitely something that's worth like scaling at this point.
Yeah, I don't know what the numbers are either, but it's one of those things where it's like, even if you hit product market fit, you don't know what that inflection point was. I mean, maybe you do, but I don't think so. It's just like things go from going well to going better to going amazing. Hopefully that's the trajectory, but you don't really know along that journey, like, okay, I hit product market fit. Now everything after this is post product market fit. So it's one of those things where it's like you aim for it and you, to an extent, you kind of know whether you've hit it or not, but I don't think there's going to be one day where we just look at each other and say like, okay, yesterday we hit product market fit, and now the future of the company, we're post product market fit. So I think it's good to think about and talk about, but I don't know if there's any like one metric where if we hit it, then we know we've hit product market fit.
Yeah, which is crazy because we talk about it all the time, and like we talk about like, the launch being like the I guess the beginning point of determining product market fit, and realizing and looking at it, we're like, you know what, we don't even actually have an actual threshold, like a concrete threshold or any kind of like numbers that kind of say or signal product market fit. It's just going to be something that is maybe sussed out over like a period of time, or I don't know, like it's very hard to like wrap my head around like what's that like, I guess goalpost for product market fit, and like trying to kind of box it in is really, I guess, difficult at this stage of the game. So
yeah, this was a while back. This was maybe almost 2 years ago. But I was arguing with this guy on LinkedIn because he was saying Allbirds did not reach product market fit. And I was kind of like, they've sold like millions of pairs of shoes. Like they've opened their own stores. They raised a ton of money. They went public. Like, I feel like that's product market fit. And he was arguing that they didn't get product market fit because their stock price was so low, and they're kind of like on the decline after, I don't know, 10 years or whatever it's been. So there's some people out there who have like very high, I guess, like their idea of product market fit is like very strict. And even Allbirds doesn't fit that definition. So I don't know. It depends on the person, I guess.
yeah, that's why the definition is just like so, out there. There's not a real clear cut like product market fit definition, because you'll have guys like that who claim like a public company hasn't reached product market fit after millions of sales of their shoes, and then there's some who like, oh, after 200 units out of the door, that constitutes product market fit. I think it like ultimately will kind of like go back on leadership, go back on the founders. How do they like what can they glean from these numbers to justify moving to the next step?
Yeah. And then this is my last product market fit question. I don't know if you have another one, but it kind of all comes down to that. And if you have it, then your business will probably do well. If you don't have it, then you have to pivot. It's going to be tougher. Maybe you have to shut down. So like, why do you think that we've been able to go so long without even knowing if we're going to have product market fit or not?
I mean, not launching is like one of the reasons why we've been able to go so long, like not being out there and selling shoes to the public, or attempting to sell shoes to the public, is probably the main reason why we don't know whether or not we have product market fit. And
well, my question, sorry to interrupt you, but the question is like, in terms of like mindset, like why have we continued to move forward with this idea without like, how are we so motivated to move forward, even like not having known about product market fit for like 3 years or whatever it's been, but we keep kind of moving forward. So like, why do you think that is? Like, why are we so motivated?
I mean, I think we have strong ideas about the product. Like we feel that there's product market fit. Like we feel that there's product market fit. Like we feel that like our target consumer will purchase this product. They will use this product as kind of intended. Now we just have to prove that to the rest of the world. And that's what the product market fit. It's not, I'm backtracking a little bit on like, oh, this is like the feeling that this is going to be for the founders. I think it's also a lot for like the outside community being able to prove to them what we believed all along. So I think we've kind of gone in there with an idea that this product is right for the consumer, and the consumer will like resonate with this product, and they will purchase it, and they will like use it as intended. Like I think those things are kind of instilled in us and like keep us going. But in terms of like the actual like metrics to determine it, like I still think I go back to like the answers that we just kind of gave. Like we don't necessarily know what that threshold is to prove to the rest of the world that this is like product market fit is, we've achieved product market fit. But I think it's something that we kind of, innately believe that like, okay, we have something that the consumer wants.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think we've done enough research and got enough validation that we feel confident once we do get this thing in the market that it's going to sell and that people are going to like it. And then one of the things that Amélie was saying was, as you're trying to get product market fit, like you have to be obsessed with your customer. And I think for us, we're obsessed with the space and creating the best product for kids who are just getting into sports and for their parents. And so like having the passion for that segment and wanting to bring this product to market that is specifically for this segment that we believe is underserved. I think a lot of days when things are not going as well, or when you're like, man, it's taking forever to get to market. Like I think of our target customer, and that kind of continues to motivate me to push things forward.
100% agree. I always like, even through this testing phase, I think about like the consumer and like, what are they going to think about like this product or this feature of the product? That's like, for instance, I'll point to some of the thing that was going on with the pull tabs. Like, okay, like, oh, that was fraying. Like we can't have the pull tab spray like that because our consumer is not going to, stay in for that. Like they want something that they can like, that's durable, that they can use to like, their kid, that they are confident that their kid will be able to use in order to don the shoe. So yeah, they're, putting myself constantly in the mindset of like the consumer and realizing that, and trying to realize what they think or what they see or what they envision when they think about the product and really trying to meet their needs. I think that definitely has a bearing on like, okay, our whole idea of product market fit as well, in terms of like our belief system, while we keep going without having like any kind of real evidence of product market fit outside of that, like, I guess, belief system that we have or continue to carry.
100%.
I guess this is a little bit of a tangent now. So what are your plans, goals, and strategies for assuming we achieve that so amorphous of a product market fit like metric, like assuming we achieve that, like what are your goals for fundraising or for growth or whatever it might be coming out of a Kickstarter or soft launch? I know Amélie, she mentioned a couple of things in terms of like her fundraising techniques and strategies, and she always was, I guess initially she played up the tech angle. Like, what are some things that we can kind of do to get people on board or get investors on board, or to build out like our consumer base so that we can scale and grow coming out of a soft launch or successful soft launch?
I think in a space like ours, the product is the number one thing. So convincing, to the extent we have testimonials or other proof that our product is better than other products on the market, I think that's essentially like the first thing that an investor is going to ask about. Like, how is this different from a Nike shoe? Is this better? Like, why would consumers want to buy this instead of a Nike shoe? How are you going to differentiate in this really crowded space? And to the extent that we have like really crisp messaging, positioning, answers to those questions, and then we can also point to testimonials of parents saying like, I've bought Nikes before, now I'm buying worldie shoes, they're much better in these ways. If we have like quantitative testing from the factory, from third-party testers, testimonials from our designers, our development team, in terms of what we've done differently versus other people in the space, I think that's going to be super important for us because if you're investing in a consumer product, you want to be convinced that the product is superior to other things on the market. So that would be the first kind of strategy that I would have, just like being really, really confident that our product is differentiated. I think we could also point to certain comps, right? So there's Hoka, there's Allbirds recently, and there's other kind of like smaller companies too, but there's a ton of these footwear companies that are popping up that are taking share away from a Nike, from an Adidas. And we're looking at those companies. We're talking to people we know at those companies to understand the playbook, and we're kind of rolling out a similar playbook. So kind of pointing to that trend in the industry as well, which you might not really realize unless you're in the footwear space. But then once you kind of point that out, then people will be like, oh yeah, like I have seen Hokas at the gym. I've seen people wearing Ons. Seen people wear Allbirds, things like that. And then I think we also just have to tell our story, because that's really what differentiates us. And at the end of the day, you do invest in a company, but really you invest in people. So to the extent that we can tell the entire story of our journey, the work that we've put in, kind of the all the grassroots stuff that we've done, I think that's really going to resonate as well. And also, I mean, we have impressive backgrounds to an extent, right? So, also playing that up to an extent and being like, hey, we went to these schools, we work at these companies, we've been trained in this way. So like your money is in good hands with us. So that's how I would think about it.
I think that's like perfect. I don't have anything to add, just to reiterate, to say like those are the strategies that I would lean on, and probably even in that order in terms of like hierarchy as well. I think that's exactly what we could use and show in terms of differentiation, in terms of being able to lead with a product. And like, this is the thing that's really like, and we could kind of show it resonating by the amount of sales or the people or the testimonials or whatever it might be. So I think all that is really good. So I don't, like I said, have anything to add to that strategy.
So another thing that me and Amélie were kind of talking a little bit about was she was bringing up Gary Vee and kind of like grind set, right?
Yeah.
So hustle culture, and that's kind of gone out of style a little bit, but I think still, like in startups, you kind of recognize that if you don't do something, nothing is going to get done. So you can fall into that trap of just working and working and working and working. And Amélie was saying that you have to kind of know your limits and the importance of sleep. Like, sleep is really important. So do you feel like you know your limits as it relates to this business and everything else that you have going on? And are you able to kind of like stop before you go past those limits?
I think like my limits are like always kind of changing. There's like seasons to like, life based upon like, what are the kids doing? Are they in school? If they're in school, like they're kind of like also engaged in a lot of sports. Gives me time to do certain things and like spend a lot of time in the business during the, throughout the day, and even now in the evenings. And so like my limits seem to constantly like kind of like change, and I definitely like bump up against them all the time. And it's not anything about like wanting to grind or feeling like I need to grind or wanting to be a part of like that grind culture or whatever. It's like I have goals, and I like want to like reach those goals, and I want to like meet them, and like I envision like where we want to be at here in like, the next 6 months, 12 months, 3, 4, 5 years from now. Like, I think I have goals about that, and I want to like get to them and achieve those goals. And it just takes work. You got a task in front of you. You just got to do it. If it, you don't do it, then it's just not, it's not going to get done, because it's just like us. It's just right now, the three of us. And so like, I think that's what like, kind of keeps me like pushing towards it. I would always like kind of joke with my wife, Kate, that like, naturally I would like want to just chill and like be laid back and just like, not have a whole lot of like crazy responsibility on me. She doesn't like buy that at all. But I also like, juxtapose that with all like the goals that I have. And I feel like, oh man, in order to achieve them, I got to go out and do all this stuff. And so it's not that I necessarily want to go out and grind. It's just that it's part of it if I want to get to these goals, if I want to achieve them. And so that's where I'm at. And like, I constantly bump up against like my limits all the time. And some of it are just like physical or mental limits that are like, internal to me. And some of it is just like, a family, like realizing like, oh, wow, I haven't like hung out with the daughters in a while. Let me make sure I take them to the park or whatever. Like I'll bump up against like family limits. So that's what I was kind of trying to get at earlier on in the answer. So yeah, I feel like it's constantly changing, and no, I'm not wanting to grind. I think it's just like, the nature of the beast, and that's where I'm at if I'm going to try to get these, achieve these goals.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. I think for me, naturally, my mindset is kind of like grinding, just based on kind of like some of the environments that I've been in. Like that's kind of just what I'm used to. And I would say I'm getting better at understanding my limits, but that doesn't mean that I stop when I get there. And it has taken its toll to an extent. And sometimes if you push too hard, then you kind of like have to take a step back for a little while just to kind of like let yourself recover. Or if you feel like, man, I haven't been sleeping and like just my creativity is way worse. So like my productivity is going down. So I think I'm starting to get better at that in terms of like, it's probably better for me if I take a couple hours off or just go to sleep now and start this thing again tomorrow morning, because I'm going to be way more efficient versus just kind of like grinding through it right now. But like you said, there's certain things where it's like, you have to, like, sometimes you just have to do it. And if you don't do it, nobody's going to do it. And you might be tired. You might feel like you're at your mental or your physical limit, but you can still find a little bit more a lot of times. So I think I'm trying to get better at realizing, like, okay, this is a time where I actually have to push past my limits versus this is a time where I cannot push past the limit, relax for a little bit, and then pick it up again and still meet the deadline or, whatever we need to hit, but I'm not burning myself out to get there. So, and we have a lot on our plates, right? So there's a potential that in the future it becomes a little bit less that we have to juggle, but just in this season of life, it is quite a bit to juggle.
100% agree with that. And maybe this segues into this next question in terms of like, as we look to build out the team, as we look to like bring on people, we've already like brought in a new marketing member. I guess we'll have an introductory podcast too in the near future. But what's the biggest benefit of having a team? Like as we look at it, like Amélie, she mentioned that she was a solo founder at first, but like really like she was looking to get like someone, a co-founder, someone to like lean on for like support or whatnot. But I guess from your vantage point, what's the biggest benefit of having a team?
I mean, there's a ton. It's hard to pinpoint just one, but the first one that comes to mind for me is just ideas, right? So like if you're just one person, you can come up with a lot of ideas and do a lot of stuff, but you don't really get that feedback, either positive or negative, with different ideas. You don't get that debate. So one of my favorite parts about having a team or just like teammates is having that back and forth, having that idea of refining it. If there are certain parts that are bad about it, taking that out, replacing it with something else. If there are certain things that are good, really building on that. So I just like seeing it's like the collaboration piece that I really enjoy. And, I'll have a vision in my head or an idea in my head. And then once I verbalize it, talk through it with you or someone else, and we start to refine it over time, it's really fun to see where it started versus where it ends up. And I mean, the best example of that, I would say, is like our actual product. So like having that initial idea of a shoe, like 3-4 years ago, whatever it was, and then pivoting, going through different iterations of a prototype, and now getting the near final version and seeing that out in the wild. Like it's fun to be able to go through that process with other people on the journey with you.
Yeah, I think that's right. I like that one. The one that I will go with then, because I can't use that one, is like the coverage. Like, the team, like it's almost like an extra defender out there. Like you have someone else, or an extra offensive player out there. You have someone else who can handle like this area, this zone, and you're not necessarily now responsible for this huge zone. Like you have someone else that you can kind of rely on. And so like it's kind of piggybacking on your, like what your answer was, but like I think it's just like having that additional like coverage area that like covers the blind spots that would have been out there for us had we not had this like teammate or team member. And a bit of what like Amélie was saying as well, like it's someone that you can kind of use for support. There's going to be some times when we do like reach our limits or whatnot, and like being able to kind of have that extra individual who's there, who's someone that we can kind of like pass the baton off to and keep things going and allows us to kind of like, catch a breath or whatever. Like, I think that's the whole like benefit of having a team, is the coverage, the support, the perspectives. There's a plethora of them, but I think those are some definitely important attributes of a team.
100%. And we were talking about this, I think, last week, but I brought up that a lot of people, they kind of talk about a team as your family. So your coworkers, that's your family. And then there's other, like Netflix, for example, they talk about their colleagues or employees being a sports team, and they go as far as saying it's an all-star team. So if you're not performing at a certain level, you get cut pretty quickly, which I think that might be a bit far. But I think the sports team analogy is a good one rather than family, because, with your family, like you want to see your sister, your brother, your dad, your mom, you want to see them succeed, but you don't all have like one singular goal that you're working towards. And I think that is unique about being at a company, being in a startup, being in a co-founder relationship. And also it's kind of like you have that singular goal, right? So you might disagree on the tactics or the strategy, like how to get there. But at the end of the day, you know that the goal is to win, right? In a sports context, or for us, like building a big business, right? Like having a lot of customers, hopefully a lot of profitability. And so the analogy that I brought up for the two of us before was, feels like we're doubles partners in tennis, where that yin and that yang, it's important. We have different skill sets, which is important, but at the like we're working in unison. We've got to be in sync, but at the same time, it's like you have your half, I have my half. If you're not pulling your weight, if I'm not pulling my weight, like the other person is impacted by that, right? And you can kind of like, you can hit different shots, you can go about things differently, but at the end of the day, like you need to know how I'm playing, I need to know how you're playing, and you kind of need to adjust based off that. And I think this was also something that Amélie was mentioning, and it kind of like reminds me of my sports playing days, where she was saying her co-founder it was almost like a closer relationship than with her wife. So for me, it's like some of the highest highs and lowest lows that I've felt were in sports with teammates, and with family, you don't really feel that the same way, right? Like if your dad were to get a promotion at work or something, you know, you're happy for him. If your sister gets some scholarship, you're happy for her, but you don't feel like the same kind of, it's like they did that and you're happy for them. Whereas if we accomplish something, like we both share in that success. If we screw something up, we both kind of share in that failure. So I think it almost is like a closer bond in some ways than a family. In some ways, you know, like family is still family, but there's like a very, very close alignment when you're in a co-founder type of relationship. So I thought that was interesting to hear from Amélie.
Yeah, I think I 100% agree with your take on it being much more of a team analogy, being the thing that we kind of compare ourselves to, as opposed to like a family analogy. And as you were talking, I couldn't like shake the memory of like our, you know, playing intramural football, and like we're playing like zone coverage in like defense. And the whole thing about zone is that you have to like communicate, like you've got to like, one, take care of your zone, like cover any like receiver who's in your zone as a safety. And then as that receiver leaves your zone and goes into another zone, you pass them off. And so like it was a whole like communication piece. And sometimes that communication would break down and there'd be a wide open guy and he'd catch the ball, and like we'd all suffer because this one person didn't either communicate that there was a receiver coming into your zone or whatever it might be. And so like the whole team was like hurt by it and disappointed and dejected because this guy catches a pass wide open. On the other hand, like when we were operating efficiently and like effectively, we were communicating really well and letting people know like, oh, this, you know, being very loud about it. Like this receiver is like moving over to your zone, and then the other person acknowledging it. And then we'd have like, you know, a pick or, you know, an interception or something like that. And like the whole team would celebrate because we had achieved that goal that we set out to like stop the other team from scoring, and not only stop the other team from scoring, but like to turn the ball over so that we have a chance to score ourselves. So like, I think that's like a really like cool, like analogy that you brought up in terms of like that type of like a mentality that we're all kind of focused on this like one goal, which makes that bond that much deeper. It's not like a family where, you know, there's multiple different goals and you like really, you're happy about success when, a family member experiences it, but it's not a shared success in a way. It's not a shared success. Whereas on the field, on the basketball field, the soccer field, the basketball court or whatever it might be, like, you are like sharing in that success. Like it's a direct, correlation to like how you feel based upon like how that individual as a team, like how that individual was able to like do their job, and like it directly impacts like your ability to do your job and the ultimate success of the team. So I like that analogy a lot.
Yep. Well, one last question, and this is kind of similar to what we were talking about before in terms of product market fit. But Amélie said, before you get someone to pay for something, you haven't validated anything. So how do you feel about that? Do you think we've validated anything because we haven't got someone to pay for anything yet?
I mean, ultimately, from the outside looking in, we haven't gotten anything validated based upon like, again, like we kind of like move with this sense that we have built something that absolutely resonates and takes care of a lot of the pain points that parents and kids experience when prepping, when playing multiple different sports at this age level. So we feel like we have it, and we believe that. We strongly believe that. But to the outside world, we haven't proven anything until someone actually, or validated anything until someone actually puts up the money that they've been working for to buy that particular product, to buy our product. And so I can agree with her there and say like, yeah, that makes a bit of a sense, like, especially from like the outside looking in. For us, like the validation is like, as we like interact, as we like, you know, talk to our consumer and like listen and hear what their, you know, their pain points are, and creating a product for it and really like tailoring it. Like, I think there's already a belief internally, but the validation comes, maybe like Amélie said, when someone actually puts up money for it.
Yeah, I agree with that. I would say there's certain things that we validated. For example, we've validated that our shoe works pretty well across different surfaces. We validated that the colors, people like them, that it's comfortable. There's other things that we kind of identified that we need to fix. But I think there's certain things that we have, like we've learned what works, what doesn't. But I guess we haven't validated that people will pay the price that they need to pay for this shoe yet.
Yeah. Yeah. And that we believe will come. But I don't have any other questions.
Cool. Well, that's it. I didn't realize that the conversation around tattoos was going to make the cut in the final episode, but it was a bit funny to hear that because I kind of forgot that we had talked about that.
Yeah. I didn't make a ton of cuts on that one because it actually wasn't super long, and so I was like, oh, that's probably cool enough, decent enough content to leave in there.
Yeah, now people know my thoughts on tattoos.
Yeah, no, I don't think it'll reflect poorly on you at all.
No, I don't think so. Well, cool. That was it that I had. I thought it was a fun episode, and the product market fit. I mean, we recorded it a while ago, but I think the product market fit thing was it's been on our minds recently. So I think it was good for us to do this reaction around this time.
Yeah, definitely on the forefront, especially as we get ready to launch and really determine whether or not, from the outside perspective, whether or not we actually have some sort of product market fit. So yeah, it was very relevant to where we're at right now, even though, the original recording was a little while ago. I mean, the response is timely.
Agreed.
Cool. Well, that's the pod, I guess.
Yep. Until next time.